One fateful day, while sitting in their patrol car, Ben and Lord received a radio call about a nearby robbery in progress. Without hesitation, Ben activated the sirens and rushed to the scene. Upon arrival, Ben spotted the two suspects fleeing on foot. Determined to apprehend them, Ben pursued the criminals, but they managed to escape into the nearby woods just as he was closing in. Ben halted the car and scanned the woods. Being the first responder at the crime scene meant he had no backup except for Lord, who was barking from the back of the vehicle. Throughout the pursuit, Ben grappled with the dilemma of pursuing the armed suspects without backup, but he couldn't risk letting them escape and harm others. Summoning his courage, Ben beckoned Lord to his side before they ventured into the dense foliage. Following Lord's keen sense of smell, Ben raced through the trees until he heard one of the men nearby. With caution, he approached, gun drawn, but was blindsided by a sharp pain in his side as the second man attacked him with a knife. Sensing his handler's distress, Lord sprang into action, launching a fierce assault on the assailants. Despite the criminal's efforts to dislodge him, Lord clung onto the attacker's arm, refusing to let go. In the ensuing struggle, the second man managed to free his partner by using a makeshift weapon, injuring Lord in the process. With the suspects escaping once again, Ben and Lord were left wounded but undeterred, determined to continue their pursuit. Lord approached his gravely injured owner, Ben, but the injuries were too severe. In a remarkable display of loyalty, Lord barked to alert backup officers of their location. Both injured officers were swiftly transported to the hospital, but tragically, Ben did not survive. Devastated by the loss of his handler, Lord fell into a deep depression, refusing to interact with anyone. His mental state deemed him unfit for duty, and he was entrusted to Ben's family, where he could find solace among familiar faces. As Lord adjusted to his new life, the day of Ben's funeral arrived. The funeral was attended by members of the police station, Ben's family, and a grieving Lord. As Ben's coffin was lowered into the ground, Lord began to bark, seemingly yearning for one last embrace from his beloved owner. After the funeral, as Ben's family prepared to leave, Sarah noticed Lord was missing. Fearful of losing another family member, she searched for him and found him lying next to Ben's grave. Despite her efforts, Sarah couldn't persuade Lord to leave the gravesite, as he remained steadfast in his silent vigil. Sarah attempted to coax Lord away from the grave by grabbing his collar, but the dog began to growl, indicating his refusal to leave his master's side. Sensing something amiss, the priest and Ben's wife decided to let Lord stay, believing he needed to be there. Sarah reluctantly left Lord at the graveside, hoping to retrieve him the following day. However, Lord remained steadfast, staying by Ben's grave without budging. Despite Sarah's efforts to feed and care for him, Lord remained unmoved, dedicated to his vigil over his lost owner. Days passed, and Lord continued his vigil, refusing to leave Ben's side. During one of Sarah's visits, Ben's friend Joe approached the grave with flowers and food for the dog. As Joe stood by the grave, Lord suddenly stopped growling and moved towards the street, where he could hear voices approaching. Joe followed Lord's lead and discovered the two men who had injured Ben and Lord. Reacting swiftly, Lord attacked, biting one of the men in the leg. The man's screams echoed in terror as he fell to the ground, pinned down by Lord's menacing presence, his neck threatened by the canine's jaws. Meanwhile, Joe swiftly apprehended the second criminal, subduing and handcuffing him before they were both taken into custody. After ensuring the criminals were in custody, Lord returned to Ben's grave, emitting a final whimper before walking away, back to Sarah's side. It seemed the faithful dog had fulfilled his duty to capture those responsible for Ben's demise. With the criminals behind bars, Lord spent the remainder of his days with Sarah, content to visit Ben's grave occasionally rather than remaining there day and night. Lord's remarkable actions led to the apprehension of two dangerous criminals, allowing Ben to rest in peace. This heartwarming tale underscores the deep bond between humans and dogs, showcasing their unwavering loyalty and love for their late owners. The loyalty exhibited by dogs like Lord has a scientific basis rooted in their ancestral connection to wolves. Domestic dogs, descended from wolves, were once taken in by humans, who provided shelter and food in exchange for their protective instincts. This bond between humans and dogs transcends time, illustrating the profound connection between man and his loyal companions. The loyal dog named Capitan was around 4 years old when Miguel Guzman, his owner, brought him home as a gift for his son. Sadly, Miguel passed away in 2006 in Villa Carlos Paz, near Cordoba, Argentina. Shortly after Miguel's death, Capitan disappeared, and the family assumed he had either found a new home or met an unfortunate end. However, several months later, during one of their visits to the cemetery in 2007, they were astonished to find Capitan at Miguel's grave. Neighbors explained that they had started feeding Capitan when they noticed he slept by the grave each night. Capitan continued his vigil until his own passing at around 15 years of age, as reported by the daily newspaper La Voz. The family was amazed because the cemetery was far from their home, and Capitan had never been there before he disappeared. 6 years after Capitan's arrival at the cemetery, Veronica, Mr. Guzman's widow, reflected on the faithful dog's dedication. She recounted how they initially searched for Capitan, believing he may have been killed. However, during a visit to the cemetery, Capitan recognized them and followed them home before returning to the cemetery at night. Veronica marveled at Capitan's ability to find Miguel's grave, as they had never taken him there before. The cemetery's director, Hector Pasiga, confirmed Capitan's remarkable journey, stating that Capitan had arrived at the cemetery on his own and eventually found Miguel's tomb. During the day, Capitan occasionally strolls around the cemetery, but he always returns promptly to Miguel's grave. At 6 o'clock every evening, he settles down atop the grave and remains there throughout the night. The cemetery staff provided food and care for the devoted canine. Miguel Guzman's son, Dan Ben, recounted his efforts to bring Capitan home, but Capitan consistently returned to the cemetery. Dan Ben remarked poignantly, "I believe he'll stay there until his own passing."